too tall for us to touch. Heaviness is on me, I don't see it. We might be whole again, we might be better off in the wake of a bitter end. Oh, I know I'm on the rise again. Set my sights on where I'm going, and my goodbyes are where I've been. Oh, I know I'm gonna rise again, singing farewell, king of the broken. So long, my friend. We could always count on the same thing, the ups and the downs like time. And we crawled through the abyss, then we came through the other side. Heaviness is only temporary, the daylight is soon breaking. Sunlight can change your heart in the wake of a bitter end. Oh, I know, yeah, I'm gonna rise again. Set my sights on where I'm going, and my goodbyes are where I've been. Oh, I know, yeah, I'm gonna rise again, singing farewell, king of the broken. So long, my friend. Oh, I can see us moving on. I can feel that coming on strong. We'll never start all over like this, and I still can't believe it. Oh, I can see us moving on. I can feel that coming on strong. We'll never start all over like this, and I still can't believe it. Oh, I can see us moving on. I can feel that coming on strong. We'll never start all over like this, and I still can't believe it. Oh, I can see us moving on. I can feel that coming on strong. We'll never start all over like this, and I still can't believe it. Oh, I know, yeah, I'm gonna rise again. Set my sights on where I'm going, and my goodbyes are where I've been. Oh, I know, yeah, I'm gonna rise again, singing farewell, king of the broken. So long, my friend.
Are you proud? Am I walking on the path that you set out? Up on heaven's balcony, you're looking down, and I've had my doubts. Are you proud? Am I loved? Most of the time I feel like I'm not good enough. It's like I always find a way to mess things up. After all I've done, am I loved? Oh, to see you smiling over me, if only just to know that you were pleased. Even though this winding road has led me through the weeds, I wanna hear you say you're good and faithful, words written on your face, you're strong and able. I wanna hear you say, come to my table. I wanna hear you say, were you there at the lowest of my life, Lord, did you care? 'Cause at times I felt like it was so unfair. When I was scared, were you there? And did you know how it felt the very first time my heart broke? When it seemed like I had no place left to go, were you still close? Did you know? Oh, to see you smiling over me, if only just to know that you were pleased. Even though this heavy load has led me to my say you're good and faithful. Words written on your face, you're strong and able. I wanna hear you say, come to my table. I wanna hear you say, I wanna hear you say you're good and faithful. Words written on your face, you're strong and able. I wanna hear you say, come to my table. I wanna hear you say, and on that day I stand before you, overcome by all you are, filled with joy because I know you welcome me with open arms. I wanna hear you say you're good and faithful. Words written on your face, you're strong and able. I wanna hear you say, come to my table. I wanna hear you say,
Open up the doors again. Let the King of Glory in. His kingdom will never end. Oh, I know that you are good. Break the darkness with your
Good morning, everybody. Will you stand up with us? If you're out on the patio, why don't you come on and join us? Welcome to Mariner, South County. We're going to sing together this morning. Let's put our hands together. Come on. Gathered in your name, calling out to you.
like a cloud. You're standing with us now, Lord, unveil our eyes. You're the reason. You're the reason we're here. You're the reason we're singing. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Open up and open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Pray that out this morning. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Sing it out. Show us your glory. Show us your power. Show us your glory, Lord. Open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Open up and open up the heavens, we want to see you. Open up the floodgates, a mighty river flowing from your heart, filling every part of our praise. Can we give him praise this morning? Come on.
It says God inhabits the praises of his people, so he's here with us right now. So we keep giving him the praise and the glory and the honor. God, move us. Move in this place, Lord. Your love's so great, Jesus, in all things. I've seen the glimpse of your heart a billion years. Still I'll be singing. How can I praise you enough? How can I praise you enough? If you know this chorus, would you sing it out? You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. Creation calls all to the Savior. We are alive for your praise in earth and sky. No one is higher. No, our God of wonders you reign. God of wonders you reign. You are the Lord. Oh, you are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. You are the Lord. Yeah, you are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. God, your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares.
your name, we lift up all praise. Not to us, but to your name, Jesus, we lift up all praise.
Lift it up.
Not to us, but to your name, we lift up all praise. Not to us, but to your name, we lift up all praise.
You are the Lord Almighty. Oh, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. You are the Lord Almighty. Yes, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. Sing that again. You are the Lord Almighty, outshining all the stars in glory. Your love is like the wildest ocean. Oh, nothing else compares. Yes, nothing else compares to your love, Lord. As I've been thinking and praying about this Wednesday, our first worship night happening here, how awesome is that? This Wednesday, yeah. I've been thinking about, sometimes it's hard to enter into worship. Sometimes it's hard to enter in with all the stuff that we might be carrying. But somebody was telling me last night that I'm willing to do it. I might not be ready, but I'm willing to do it. And I think that's the heart. That's the heart of this moment right now. I'm just saying, if that's where you're at this morning, you might not be ready, but are you willing to open your heart up and to receive what God has for you, a new hope, something new, a new word in that situation? And we're going to continue to sing his praises this morning. God can do so much with just that one little yes. He can do some big things with just that one little yes. And so we sing, yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yeah. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. Oh, my taste. Yes, would you guys sing that with me? Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. Oh, my taste. Yes, I will for all my taste. Yes, I will. I count on one thing. The same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things. Yes, I will. Singing, yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. Oh, my taste. Yes, I will. Oh, yes, I will. Yes, we will. I count on one thing. The same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now. In the waiting, the same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yeah. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. Oh, my taste. Yes, I will for my taste. Yes, choose to praise. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify, name of all names. Nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify, name of all names. All right, church, you sing it out. I'll choose to praise, to glorify, glorify, name of all names. Yeah, nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify, name of all names. Nothing can stand against. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yeah. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. Oh, my taste. Yes, I will for my taste. Yes, I will for my taste. Yes, I will. Oh, yes, we will. Yes, we will. We will say yes to you, Lord, this morning, God. God, we might not be ready, but we are willing, Lord. Welcome, church. Good morning. Listen, say hi to one another. You have some awesome people standing next to you. Greet each other, and you can have a seat.
Well, good morning. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Good morning. Happy Sunday. My name is Jeff Bachman, and I'm the student ministry pastor on staff. Thank you very much. It is so good to be with you this morning. I hope that you're having just the best Sunday morning. We're glad that you're here. If you are new to Mariners South County, then that just means that you're here, because we're all new. And so for all of us, we've now experienced, this is our 4th week as Mariners South County, and it's been a fantastic launch. I hope it's been a good, just fall kickoff for you, good launch season. For us in the student ministry world, it's been unbelievable. This last Thursday night, which is when our student ministries gather, we had over 300 students and leaders who were here hanging out. And it was absolutely, yes. Yeah, it was so good. And it's so much fun. So if you are in the student ministry world, whether you are a student in middle school or high school, and you want to be a part of that, we're going to have high school leadership and junior high leadership out on the patio. We'd love to tell you a little bit more about that. And actually, with 265 students signed up for life groups this year, we are definitely in need of some people who want to jump in and be a part of student ministry. So we'd love to meet you and kind of get you to be a part of just an exciting ministry and what is going on. And I know for some of you may think that your season of student ministry has passed, that's something that maybe you did before, but you don't want to do that anymore. You think that maybe you're too old. But I'm here to tell you, or how about this? I believe that there's a place for gray hair in student ministries, maybe no hair, sir. So I think that there's a place for us all, and we need the wisdom of this church to invest in that generation. So if you want to be a part of that, come and talk to me because our students would be blessed by that. And so it's been great. And if you want to take a step forward in that or in any of the ministries, we're going to be out at the Connect patio, so come and talk to us. So that's one way to know your next steps. So another way, and probably the best way, is our Mariners South County app, which you can download. And on there, you can not only follow along in message outlines, you can get past sermons, but it'll also send you alerts as to things that are going to be coming up, like the worship night. It'll tell you about those things. So it's a great way to stay up to date. And probably one of the best things about the app is it also is the easiest way that we've found to give and participate in tithing. Because we know that when we give on a regular basis, we are experiencing worship. It's a part of what God wants us to do and to be. And when we give back to that which God has already given to us, what we find is that we then get to participate in God's kingdom that is advancing, and then it also strengthens our faith. It takes and it does something in us, and it gives us, it acknowledges the trust that we need in God. So we encourage you to do it. It's not the only way to do it. You can give online. We also have the envelopes in the back, but we want you to be able to participate in that way. So we're glad that you're here. We love that you're spending your Sunday morning with us, and we're excited to jump in and continue on in the sermon series, The Promised Life.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, I love that. You can tell this is the service that believes a little bit of coffee is good and a little bit more is better. So good to be with you guys. Hopefully your weekend is kicking off well, or maybe I guess you're technically in the middle of it. But hopefully you're having a great weekend. If you're new with us, man, I'm so excited you decided to give us a chance. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us. As Jeff already said, by the way, he's one of 3 Jeffs on our staff if you're new. But as he already mentioned, it's new for a lot of people. There's a lot of stuff that's happened recently as we become 2 churches have become 1. Another church has already been launched out of us. There's been all kinds of stuff happening. Great stuff going on here at Mariners. I want to let you know as well, if you have been here for a while, maybe you know Jeff Priest, who spoke last week, who did an unbelievable job. So good. Such a great message. One of the things you may not know is that Mariners South County is a part of a number of Mariners churches. So Mariners Mission Viejo became, and Mariners Ocean Hills became Mariners Church South County. There's a Mariners Church in Irvine, and there's also a Mariners Church in Huntington Beach. And Mariners Huntington Beach recently, they're without a pastor right now. So this weekend they asked for us to kind of help in having Jeff Priest be a part of teaching and being a part of helping their staff transition as they find a new lead pastor for their church. So he's still with us. He's just as part of being a family of churches. We're lending a hand, and so that's a gift that you all are giving to the Huntington Beach Church to be able to continue to meet as a church. He's lending his leadership and his outstanding speaking ability to help create a little bit more stability for that church. So wanted to let you know about that. In fact, he was scheduled to speak this weekend as well, and was like, wait, we need to help out the other church. So that's what we're doing this weekend, and you guys are actually a part of that. Just grateful for you, grateful for the things that are happening in our church. Again, I have a son in high school and a daughter in junior high. Being able to be here this past weekend, past Thursday night when all the kids were here was really, really fun to see my kids be excited about our student ministries. Very, very cool stuff. Now, we have a lot to do. I'm going to jump right into today. Let me do this before I jump in. Let me just explain something. If you're unfamiliar with some of the stuff that I do, occasionally people will say, I had no idea where you were going. And sometimes that's it. That's all they say. It's just you had no idea where you were going, and that's all it is, and then I still didn't know. But I do want to tell you, you're going to think, I know where he's going with this, and you're going to go, where in the world are we going? And then you're going to go at the very end, hopefully I'll land the plane. It may not be the smoothest landing. It might be a little bumpy, but you're going to go, okay, I get what he was trying to do at least. Okay, fair? All right? Okay, now how many of you guys have ever said this phrase, just by show of hands? You've ever said this phrase? Why did I buy that? Okay, so that's virtually everybody. There's a couple people in here who are like, I've never purchased anything I didn't mean to. Way to go. You've never impulse shopped. You've never bought a stick of gum that you thought, I hate that. I don't know why I bought that. Okay, good for you guys. Now, every one of us, by the way, let me ask you, those of you who raised your hands, which was virtually everybody, what are some of the things, if you'd want, because again, we're family, but I know you're not sure about that. Maybe you're not sure, but this is, maybe you're ready to go. Maybe it's too early for you. But let me ask you, what are some of the things that you might have purchased? What's the thing you might have gone, why did I buy that? Just shout it out. Go. Pillows. You bought pillows. Why did I buy it? I don't need pillows. I can just use a rock. That's what I could just lay down. I could just lay on my own arm. That's what my arm is for. I just put it underneath there and do that. Yeah, pillows. Right. What's that? Clothes. Clothes. Oh, shoes. A lot of people are saying, Chloe, why did I buy these shoes? They're so expensive. They hurt my feet. But man, are they cute. So look at that. Check that out. Yeah. Look how they make my calves look. Yep. Yeah, obviously. Sure. Okay, what else? Cars. Cars. Not a car. Cars. Yeah, cars. You know, I'll take that one and that one and that one I got to have too. Why do I have 3 cars? Good. Anybody else? Timeshare. A timeshare. Evidently, you guys belong to the same network of timeshares. I've seen that guy at the pool. He's regretting it. Yeah, all of us, of course. Yeah, I mean, we go to a little thing, and it's all convinced. I mean, I went to one when I think I was 23. I was really, and I remember going to this thing, and they promised me they'd give me a CD player, stereo, radio thing, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go to it. Then I realized, wait a second, you don't want to give me a CD. You want me to buy your thing? We can't afford anything. I'm not buying this. And he just looked at me like, you guys just want the radio, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, here you go. See you guys later. So yeah, okay, good. Anything else? Last one. Who's got one? A treadmill. I'm going to get up in the morning, and I'm going to look at it. And I'm going to remove the laundry that I put on there and put that on the floor. And then I'm going to go get breakfast. And that's kind of what a lot of us do. Now, here's the deal. A lot of us, I mean, all of us have had things we purchased that we did not intend to purchase. And a lot of us have, at the end of the day, we actually have something, we would know as buyer's remorse. In other words, we got it and then thought, this is not working out at all the way we thought it was going to work out. But that's actually not what I'm actually talking about. What I'm talking about is something else. How did the people who are trying to sell us stuff, how did they get us to buy it? You know, I bought one. I don't know if anybody else want to confess. Anybody here buy a ShamWow? Remember the ShamWow? Anybody else show hands? Anybody else do it? Nobody else is willing to admit the shame. ShamWow is what I like to call it. Yeah, I bought one of those. You guys remember that? The guy's on TV talking about it, and it's a towel that absorbs water. Gosh, a towel that absorbs water. This is amazing. I need one of those, right? I mean, all towels, but that's the one I need, right? All of us do this kind of stuff at some point or another. And what I'm wondering is, how do they get us to do this? Now, again, if you could boil it down, and again, I'm not an advertising. This is my own. This isn't based on a whole lot of research. This is based on my own weakness about why I buy stupid stuff. And maybe you can connect with this. I'm not sure if all of you can, but I'll just give you an idea of what this might look like. So, you know, if you ever wonder why you bought it, here's at least what I think. And by the way, I talked to a guy last night who goes, I'm in advertising. You nailed it. I'm like, I don't know how, but I got it. Okay, so anyway, here we go. Here's why we bought it. There's like 4 basic reasons. One is ego. Now we just go, this is going to make me seem important. It's going to make whatever it is that if I have the thing, I'm going to seem like I'm important, which is different than actually being important or feeling important. It's just, I'm going to seem important. People will see me with my multiple cars, you know, and they'll go, look, that person must be important. Look, that person has 2 timeshares. They must be an important person. That's kind of what that looks like. It's part of the reason why we have such an obsession with the idea of even social media. Why if you ask a high school kid or a college student or even a younger adult, they're constantly wondering how many people are paying attention to the stuff that they're doing. And even more important than those people paying attention is that there's a number of people who are paying attention to them. Seeming important. Number 2, fear. We're talking about fear. We buy something because it enables us to avoid some kind of danger. If you don't have this, you're probably going to die. Or worse, you're going to be painfully embarrassed in front of other people. So you have to have this to avoid that. There's a reason why there's so much fear. Your time is running out. Are you sure? If you don't, you never know. You never want to put your family in a situation. That's why you got to buy the Bell & Howell flashlight, which a Humvee can roll over, because you don't want to be stuck in the dark with a regular flashlight. That's just lame. You need this one, because otherwise, you know, there's even that mode. If you guys saw this ad, the flashlight where it's got the flash mode and it can stop an attacker who comes into your house. Trust me, if I got a flashlight, I'm throwing it at a person, not going for the mode. Wait 1 second. If I could just find the mode that flashes in your face and freezes you. But this is the idea. We'll buy it so we can avoid danger. Second or third, we bought it because it enables us to increase our convenience. It just makes our life easier. It enables us to reduce labor or effort. This is the reason why, in some capacity, well, you know, by the way, I should say, as things begin to get, you'll see this, any product that hits all these things, it's going to sell like crazy. But there's a reason why all of a sudden, Apple introduces its new iPhones. And all of a sudden, it's like, man, my phone that I bought a couple years ago, that was the fastest, most impressive thing in the world. Now, when I hold it up against this new thing, what is taking so long for my phone to do a thing? Because now there's a new thing, and it became so much more, now it's so much more difficult to have my old phone than my new one, which makes things just a whole 3/4 of a second faster, and that's what I need. Makes my life easier. Lastly is this, we bought it because it gives to us the promise of some kind of pleasure. And I would say this as well. All that's just simply saying it enables us to feel good or to feel better. There's something in it that says you bought it because it enables you to feel in some way a little bit better about things. Or I should say probably this way, it enables you to forget about the other things that aren't going so hot. It just enables you to kind of put things on pause. Now, the more a product promises to hit one or more of these things, the more likely we are to acquire it. The more that a product hits one or more of these things, the more likely we are to acquire it. And I would say this. This is where we're going to get to. When we buy something, when we actually go on to purchase and acquire a thing, we're not attaching ourselves to a product per se. We're attaching ourselves to the promise that it makes. When we buy a thing, we're not simply getting a product. We're attaching ourselves to the promise that it makes. That's really important because it tells us about us. It tells us about the kind of promises that we're seeking. Now listen. No matter what your understanding is of God, or of the Bible, or Jesus, or church, or whatever, no matter your impression of all those things, part of all of us is attachable to some kinds of promises. All of us are attachable to some kinds of promises. And whatever things make the commitment to deliver on those promises, our needs for ego or avoiding danger or minimizing labor or feeling better, we'll consider granting it our allegiance. And the way we grant allegiance to things that we can actually purchase is to buy them. Anything that does something that makes some kind of commitment to us, that it's going to help us with our ego or our need for our convenience or a need for avoiding danger or feeling better, we're going to go, maybe we ought to acquire it. Now, the stuff that we talk about and all the stuff that's in our lives now is different than, it's different now than it was yesterday and will be different tomorrow. All those things are new, but these are ancient issues. The idea of us attaching ourselves to things is a very ancient issue. And it's been an issue for a very long time. And by and large, it's an issue for God's people, the Israelites, as we talk about our stories. We're in this series called The Promised Life, as God's people are making their way into the promised land out of Egypt, out of their years of slavery, into the promised land. It's the same thing for those people. God's people are wrestling with the same stuff. Granted, they look a little different, and maybe this is a 21st century version of it, but really it's the same kind of thing. In fact, as God begins to speak to Joshua, who now is appointed leader, Moses, who took people out of Egypt, maybe you're familiar with the story, took all of God's people out of Egypt and on into this place, onward into the desert, toward this place called the Promised Land. Moses then, dies, and God appoints a new leader. And the expectation, as he says to Joshua, is this: I'm going to be with you. You don't have to worry about it. Don't worry. I'll be with you. Here's what it says in Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Don't be afraid and don't be discouraged. For the Lord God will be with you wherever you go. Now, in other words, what's being said here is there's only one attachment that you need to make, and it's to me. And I'm going to be with you. Now, the presumption of this statement, by the way, is that it's good. That people who are reading this, the original readers aren't like, oh, and God has to come with us too? I'm like, wow, doesn't he have other things to do? Couldn't we? Really, it's been kind of a little bit of a hassle. The presumption here is, this is going to be good. The idea is that God being with us is a very, very good thing. Now, the problem for us, though, as we've mentioned this, if you're with us last week, and Jeff did a great job of this, the problem for us is that if God doesn't address the categories of need we just talked about in the way that we want, then it means that God's not working. Our life's not working, which means, as we said last week, I should say this way too. Let me just jump forward. When life isn't working, it means then that God isn't working. This is what you heard Jeff Priest say last week. That if we start feeling like those needs that we have, that they're not really being met, then what we'll say is, well, life isn't working, so God must not be working because I don't feel all those things that I want to be dealt with. I don't feel like they're actually being addressed. And the truth is, we're all susceptible to attaching ourselves to any number of things, especially when we feel like life isn't working out right. But this is where we get into trouble. It's where the Israelites get into trouble as well. It's where things start to go haywire, when things get out of order, when things start not working out the way they're supposed to. And I want to do today is I want us to back up way back into the story a little bit to get a better handle on this, to go back to the original order of things. Because when we go all the way back to the very original order of stuff, what you get is this very unusual God of the Israelites. This God is an incredibly unusual ancient God, and let me just give you what that looks like. First of all, the God of the Israelites, God's people, what God does is he creates, the story about who this God is that he creates things out from chaos. In other words, there's a chaotic beginning, an emptiness and a void, the Bible talks about, a darkness and an emptiness from which God creates all life. In the ancient world, the way most gods are described is that all things that are created are the result of some chaos. In other words, chaos is that like there's gods that are fighting or having all kinds of altercations, and then, oh my gosh, here comes the earth and here comes people, like they're the accidental outcome. But the God of the Israelites is one who creates with intention and order out of the chaos or above the chaos. Additionally, he places all things in order that they might orbit him. He's at the center of all things. It's him around which everybody ought to orbit all of the entire cosmos ought to orbit this God. That's the right order of things. Secondly, this God is an up-close God. The other gods are distant. They live in faraway places. Their intent is to be far away. But God's constant intention, as you read the Bible, is always to be up close and among his people. Often you see God will say, particularly in the Hebrew Bible, he'll say these words, the Old Testament. He'll say over and over again, I'll be your God, you'll be my people, and I will make my home among you, or I will dwell among you. Even at the very beginning of creation, the way God is intimately involved with his own creation. It says that, the Bible will tell us that God created the man from the dust of the earth and breathed in him the breath of life directly into his nostrils. It isn't then that God is sort of uninvolved with human beings. He's intimately involved with them. And then when disorder threatens his order, he does a couple amazing things. So human beings bend the arc of creation, all of the cosmos around themselves, believing God isn't working. So they begin to grab onto stuff on their own. And introducing into this world, what they introduced first into this world, this perfectly intended world, they introduced the first thing that they've never yet experienced, which is shame. The Bible describes it as nakedness. And they try to cover themselves with all kinds of stuff. And God goes, no. I'm going to have to cover you with my covering. That's the only covering that will be sufficient. And so that's what God does. These people are experiencing shame. God then, even though they're the ones who have introduced disorder into his own creation, God then puts clothing over them that they might not live with that kind of shame. And then he does this other thing. It's a little bit surprising. He actually says, because of your intent to bring about this kind of disorder, he restricts their access to his perfect garden home for them. Now, the way that he does it is a little bit bizarre. Okay, and again, some of you at this point are going to be like, I don't know where we're going, and I don't trust him. We're not going to land the plane. That's okay, because it's about to get really weird. Okay, here we go. Here's what God does. So the Lord God banished him, meaning Adam, this guy he created with breathing the breath of life into him, banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. So you're now cast out. Then, bear with me, after he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim, which is angels, and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. I have no idea what that looks like, by the way. I don't know what that means. I don't know if the sword, it almost sounds like the sword is on its own. Like there's angels and then a sword's just going whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I don't know what that's the sound it probably made. I learned that in school. But you don't know. There's this sword just going back and forth. You don't know what it means. Are angels holding it? How many are there holding it? We just know there's a sword saying, you can't, your disorder can't be here anymore. You now get to be outside of this. Now, the short way to describe that is the word exile. These people are exiled from the place they were intended to live. And by the way, the rest of the Bible is the story of God trying to bring or illustrating or developing or making a path for those people to find their way home. That's the rest of the Bible. In fact, even the longest view of it, as confusing as the Bible might be to some of us in the room, and myself included, to be honest, the rest of the Bible is the story of God returning his people back home. Now, hold that in your mind, because I want to jump back to Joshua and the Israelites. Remember, they've been in slavery for 400 years. They've walked now in the desert for 40 years. Every day they get fed with this magical food called manna, which literally translated in Hebrew just means, what is it? Literally, it's like, there's the what is it. It falls from the ground and we eat the what is it every day. That's what it says. These people don't even know how to describe it, and that's how they're being fed every single day. And now they're at this point, the manna has stopped. They're about ready to go into which means their wandering is over. Manna is desert food. And now they're all of a sudden, they're at the doorstep of this promised land. And the first thing they got to do is they got to deal with this city called Jericho, which I'll get to in a second. So Joshua is about to lead his people into this land. And notice what happens next. And it's about to get weirder. Here we go. Everybody, hold on. Here we go. Joshua chapter 5, verse 13 says this. Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. So now we have our second sort of heavenly swordsman standing there. Which for a lot of us, we go, what's up with the divine sword people? Why are they out all the time? Why are these people around doing this stuff? What's that all mean? And truthfully, I don't totally know, except to tell you this. that maybe with this depiction, the promised land, this promised land is actually, at least in some degree, a return to God's intended order for things. Because here's the guardian of that ordered space. Right? Now, keep on reading. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" And what he's saying is, are you on our team? Because if you're not, I'm not sure what we're going to do. Are you with us? Because there's a sword and I don't know what's happening, but you clearly are some heaven-bound sword person. And we're a little bit where you're wielding a sword and we're not sure what we're going to do. And it's a fair question in a sense because Joshua is the guy who's been appointed as the leader of God's people. And he asks this, whatever this is, this sword person, and he says, are you with us? Here's what gets answered. Neither, he replied, this divine sword person. Neither, but as the commander of the army of the Lord, I've now come. Now, here's what I want you to understand. This sword-wielding whatever this person is, this commander of the army of the Lord, which there's a lot of theories about who this person is. But all this to say, he simply says, you don't get to ask me which side I'm on. I get to ask you which side you're on. Which means as we start moving forward into this story, and there's going to be a battle which is to come, he's saying, you don't get to ask me, the commander of the Lord's army, isn't saying, you don't get to ask me who I'm attached to. What I'm asking you is, who are you attached to? Secondly, as we go into this battle, this isn't just a straightforward, good guys versus bad guys battle ahead. There's something else here that's going to go on. So then here's what happens. Just another little bit of confirmation here. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, what message does the Lord have for his servant? And then he said, the commander of the Lord's army, he replied, take off your sandals, for the place you're standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Now, some of you may remember. If you don't, it's okay. There's another time in the Bible where a person is commanded to take their sandals off because the ground they're standing on is holy. That's Moses. Which, in other words, what's happening here is this is an illustration, or at least a very clear picture, that what's going to happen next is because God is the agent of whatever the action is. It is God who is going to take things under control, and it is God who is going to make stuff happen. It is God who is the agent of all this action now moving forward. Now, Israel's story, much like ours, is a story of competing allegiances and attachments. And I would say for all of us, our allegiance is generally threatened when we start thinking that God is acting unwise. Now, some of you are like, I would never say that about God. He is God. He's never unwise. Except that's not true. Not that God's not unwise, but that you would think that. Here's what I'll show you in a second. Because here's what happens. Here's the plan. Okay, I want you to see how audacious God's plan is right here. They got to go through the city of Jericho, and here's what his plan is. Now, the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Next. Then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands. Let me just pause on that for a second. Notice the verb tense here. It's a future past tense. There's a thing that hasn't yet happened, but I'm declaring it has already happened. That's a pretty confident kind of plan. See, I've already done a thing. Haven't yet done it, but I've already done it. Which is asking of Joshua and all the people that are following him to say, God's going to do a thing. In fact, he's so confident it's going to happen, he's declaring it as if it already did happen. See, I'm going to do a thing I did. Well, now, we get to this promised outcome. Let me just show you really quickly about this sort of plan that God has. And this is where you kind of go, okay, God, you're wonderful, but I'm not so sure you're all that wise, because here's what the plan is. Remember, all these guys are warriors. They're anticipating a battle. They're looking, well, actually, it says this way. They may not be warriors, but they're anticipating a battle. And here's what happens. Here's the plan that God has for his people. By all accounts, this is incredibly foolish. Here's what the plan is. This is Joshua 6, verse 3. March around the city once with all the armed men. So all the armed men get all their gear. Everybody gear up. It's battle time. We're going to go marching. Okay, they're marching around the city. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. Okay, so the Ark of the Covenant, this is where God's presence is supposed to reside among the people. We now have marching and we now have trumpets. Okay, so then it says this. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. And when you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the army will go up. The army will go up and everyone will go straight in. So here's our plan. We got marching, we got trumpets, we got shouting. Everybody get ready for a battle. Now, by the way, when I first heard this, some of you will know this, and this is going to age me and age you a little bit, so you may not want to admit that you know this. I remember my aunt used to play she used to play the record of Chuck Mangione. And some of you don't know who Chuck Mangione is, but all I have in my head, some of you are with me. And I want you to can you play a little bit of Chuck Mangione? This is what I imagine they hear. Marching around the city, here we go. I mean, this is kind of this is my head, I'm like, this is what they're doing. Right, this is the dumbest plan ever. You have to imagine there's got to be another God. Really? Okay, so cool. We're marching around. That's what we're doing? That's the plan? Okay. Anything else? I mean, is everyone clear on the plan? Because we're marching, we're trumpeting, and then we're going to shout. And the walls this is our plan. Okay, cool. Now, this, by the way, notice, don't lose this. This is an invitation to allegiance, to attachment. And it's not an invitation to an attachment or allegiance based on God's goodness, but on his wisdom, which is pretty much something we would say, that's not a good plan. He seems pretty unwise. Now, when we get to our own lives, there are times in which God says for us to do things or invites us to live a particular way in which we say, that's just crazy. And because it's crazy, we can dismiss it. We actually use this phrase often. Maybe not literally this phrase, but God might invite us to something and we'll go, this seems crazy, so I don't need to really get on board with it. Because God seems to be pretty unwise. I mean, he's pretty old. Times have changed a bit. There's now we got new things happening here, and this seems crazy, so I don't have to do it. When it comes to dating and relationships, a lot of you are in that phase of your life, or you're in kind of that, maybe you're back in that phase of your life, and you're wondering about what it means in terms of dating and relationships, and part of you might be saying, I understand that God has an idea about how things ought to go, for the way people ought to be seeing each other. But there's a world out there that says, this is the way dating relationships ought to go, particularly when it comes to things like physical intimacy. Well, God's an old God, and there's a lot of things that have changed now, and we're going to do whatever we want, and that's because that seems crazy that I would actually try to do a thing that nobody did since my grandparents, which is to wait around until marriage to be physically intimate. That's crazy, so I don't have to do it. It doesn't make sense because it's so crazy. There's people who maybe in certain circumstances are in relationships going, I'm so desperately lonely, I don't care if people take from me things that I don't want to give them, but I'd rather have that than be alone. It seems crazy to try to withhold something someone wants to take from me, even though I get why that would be there, so I'm going to let them take from me something. Those of you who are in business, there's an ethic in the world, which I don't have to tell you this, which is really, how do you subvert the person that's in front of you? How do you devour the person that's ahead of you that you might be able to take their place, be able to step into their role? God says, maybe we ought to think about our relationships and the people that are not with so much fear or so much antagonism, but maybe we ought to think differently about those people. Well, that seems crazy, so I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to cut corners or find a way. We know that God might say to us, even a truth that we have a hard time resisting, God might say to us something to this effect. I love you. You're cherished. You're beautiful. You're the person I love you the way that you are, and I'm not done with you yet. There's so much more that we get to do together. Yeah, but that seems crazy, so I'm going to just continue to live the lie that I'm not loved. Because when we get to a place where we can get, and this is a big faith moment for a lot of us, and there's lots of examples. I don't have time to go through them all. You get what I'm getting after, though. Because we tend to go, God, I get what you're saying, but that's crazy, so I'm not doing it because everybody will think I'm crazy. In fact, they'll know I'm crazy. If we can get from this to this statement, then we made a huge leap. This seems crazy, but I'm going along with it anyways. This seems crazy. Nobody else thinks this way. Nobody else is operating under this kind of set of circumstance, but that seems crazy, but I'm going to go with it. And what ends up happening in the story here is that God's people are invited to this kind of life. And by the way, as we talk what's coming up next, I should say this before I go on to the next thing, is this. I'm going to talk to you about this siege of Jericho. And it's one of the most troubling kind of parts of the Bible. Those of you who are Bible critics are like, I'm not sure. There's lots of parts of the Bible I like. This is one that, it's not only is there sort of this bizarre wall falling down thing, which might be enough to kind of dismiss for you the Bible. But I'd also say it's a challenging passage because of what it asks of the Israelites. And what I want to give to you, just this. I'm going to do the best I can to explain a thing. It will not be sufficient for a number of you. And I would say for a lot of you, as we talk about it, we're talking about next, I would say this is something that can neither be dismissed nor easily understood. And if you walk out of here going, I got it, I totally got it, you don't get it. Okay? Now, I want you to have some degree of confidence in what you're hearing, but I just want you to understand there's lots of layers to this, and I can't cover them all. But I do want to give you some idea of what I think is happening here, at least as far as I can see it, for this instance in the Bible. All right? Now, here's what's happening. Let's see, yeah. On the 7th day, Joshua commanded the army, shout. So they've walked around 7 times, they shout. For the Lord has given you the city, and the city and all that it's in it are to be devoted to the Lord. The word devoted, the way that the ultimate impact or the ultimate destination of the word devoted is that things are utterly destroyed. It's not like devoted, like we kind of set them aside and no. The idea of devotion here is the Hebrew word harem, which means literally to destroy. So much of what this means here is that there's the things that ought to be destroyed here or devoted are essentially what's being said is these things are so unbelievably difficult to handle that only God could handle them. Nobody else could handle them, and that then is the picture of devotion that we're going to get. Now, when you get to this story, I'll come back to the idea of devoted in a second. No people should handle this or take this. Now remember, this isn't a story of God's good moral people against bad people. It often gets characterized this way. In fact, the story of the people, as they look at the land and everything else that's happening, they go, we wanted to go in there, but there's these big, hideous, horrible, gross people that live there. That's actually when they originally sent people to look at the land. Those spies come back and go, gosh, there's really hideous people there. They're enormous and gross, and we're going to die. Now, the story isn't God's moral people against evil people. It often gets characterized that way, but it's actually not that. It's not just it's like moral army versus the immoral people. And we know that's not the case because of this thing. Here's how we know this. Because there's this little interjection in the passage. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared because she hid the spies we sent. Quick backstory. Here's a person when the Israelite army is making their way, or the Israelite people are making their way into this promised land. Joshua sends some spies and they camp out in her house and she hides these spies. But I want you to understand, Rahab, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, has a label, the prostitute. Which means she's not the picture of moral perfection that you would expect God to be going, well, it's God's moral people against all these people who are immoral. No, because here's the person who's going to be spared. It's a person, by all accounts, people go, that's not exactly the picture of perfect morality. What you have with her is a picture of total allegiance. She's attached herself to God, and that seems to be the biggest issue going. Remember, just as a side note, God's people weren't rescued out of Egypt because they were more moral than the Egyptians. Remember, God's people are rescued out of Egypt, brought into the desert, and it's there that they're given the law, meaning the law is given to an already freed people. It's not like, well, God's like, well, you know what? Those Egyptians they're kind of immoral, and my people are so moral. I'm taking them out to rest as a reward for their behavior. No. God rescues his people because they're his people. Rahab and all that are with her are spared because she belongs to God. She has committed her allegiance to him. She's attached to him. All other attachments have been let go. Now, what's particularly important as we talk about this, what's really critical for God's people as they come into this land, and the thing that's probably, this is like a 10-cent Bible word, and if you remember it, great. If you don't, it's not that important. I just want you to know what the word is that's kind of being described here. The number one issue for God's people as they come into this land is going to be this thing called syncretism. Syncretism. Some of you thought, wasn't that the Police album from 1983? That's synchronicity. Just a minute. But syncretism. What that means is, the best way to describe this is, I don't know if this is this isn't a technical term, but I would say it's hyperactive attachment disorder. That what these people are doing, syncretism is the act of amalgamating, taking on, incorporating other cultures, religious beliefs, practices into another one, that they merge together. This is a big issue for God. Over and over again, what you get is this sense about God believes that when people attach to additional things, in addition to him, that somehow or another it has a chaotic effect. That there's a soul-sucking, damaging consequence when people begin to adopt other things and make them become a part of their own lives. And so this is the biggest issue that God's looking at. And he has this uncompromising there's these unpromising sort of promises that things make to us that we want to go, well, I get to have that too, don't I? God says this will absolutely add to the chaos of your lives. Let me then read to you what happens next. So God's people, they see the walls fall down. God's given them this picture, and here's then what happens. Notice the language here, which is addressing this issue. But keep away from the devoted things. In other words, things that are intended to be destroyed. So that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking on any of them. Otherwise, you'll make the camp of Israel Otherwise, you'll make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. All the silver and the gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. Now, so here's the injunction. Stay away from the devoted things because you can't handle them. Because they're going to suck you in. They're going to take you and they're going to do all of the things. They're going to do these things that you never intended to you in your own life, and you don't want them. You think you want them, but they're going to take you out. So here's what he commands the people to do. He actually says, they devoted the city and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it. Now, there's a problem with this for these folks. Because remember, in this particular time and place, we look through this through the lens of a 21st century people, and we go, why does every living thing have to die? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But remember, this is a time in the world, this is called the Iron Age, where people just got in battles all the time. Literally, there's a season of war. It's the spring. It's like, we got basketball season starting up, Lakers preseason tonight. Come on, LeBron. Anyways, but there's seasons of stuff. It's like that's a season where people go to war. People do this all the time. There's a consciousness about war that's different than our own. And always in war, what happens is this is just what you did. You would take stuff. Here's the spoils of war. These aren't earth-shattering. You're going to know these things. Land, people, livestock, and treasure. Land is sort of an obvious thing. This is a conversation about land. It's about taking over this promised land, which has its own problems. I get that. When they talk about people, they're talking about not only sort of increasing the slave population of the conquered people. Generally, we either kill the men and take on the younger folks to be slaves. And probably the most victimized people would be women in this case. And so now what you have is, these are the typical spoils of war, all these things. And people would generally go, well, look, there's all this money we can take. We can line our own pockets. Isn't that the greatest thing in the world? We're doing that. And God says this, about all these things that you think you're going to get, you can't have any of it. There will be no unauthorized profiting from this action. Because if it was there, you would be attaching yourselves to it and you would make it about you. So you can't have it. You can't have all these other, you can't take all these other things. No, yes, the land, but the land is mine and I'm giving it to you. And the rest of these things, they're devoted, which means they can never be used by you for you. It can't be about you because you're so susceptible to competing allegiances and attachments. What God is after is a total attachment to him. That's it. Of all the other things we attach ourselves to, all that stuff, those are all things that enable us in some capacity or another to be or to introduce more chaos and more disorder in our lives. God says, I don't want that. The only way things are supposed to work is when your life orbits my own. Now, I'm going to give you two questions to think about. The first one's, they're both important. The second one is informational, it'll help you. The second one, I think if you could get to that, which may take a lot longer, you're actually going to experience some real transformation. So I'll tell you the first one, and you might be able to predict it, but it's this. To what things have I attached the promise of a promised life? What things in your own life do you go, this is the thing I hope, if I could get this, then I would have the fullness of life I'm hoping to have. If I could possess, if I could own, if I could be near, what things have a disproportionate weight in your life? Could be good things. Job, kids, could be your own relationship. Those are all things that are valuable. But when they get threatened, do you power up? Are these things that sometimes is it your own physical attractiveness? Is it someone else's physical attractiveness that you're like, I don't want them to have that? In other words, if you attach the promise of a promised life to something other than God, remember that the whole intention of God's best possible life for us, this promised kind of life, has at its center God. If we've done this, then what we're actually saying is our lives are beginning to orbit something else that isn't God. There was someone last night who said that they came in for prayer. I don't know who this person was, but said, my life orbits a thing that I want to detach from. I've had an eating disorder for however many years. And I don't want to be attached to it any longer. It is running my life, is what she's saying. That's an important question. What is it for you? What are the things around which maybe they have just, you've attached at least a little piece of that promised kind of life to a thing? What is it? Now, here's the other question. Super important. What soul need is that thing promising to satisfy? Here's what I mean by that. The first question is a what question, and this is a why question. Why is it that you continue? Why is it that you and I continue? Why is it that some people manage to have, as we tend to refer to them, people that have bad choosers, they have bad dating choosers? Why is it that they have that? Because there's a soul need that's not being met, and they're doing the best that they can with the tools that they've been given to answer all the fragmentation and brokenness in their lives. This is true of everybody. There's something there's some wound or some hurt or some fragmentation we're trying to find in our own lives, and we're looking to go, it's not really about the thing, remember, it's the promise that it's making. And what then is that soul need way down within us that we're trying to remedy by that thing, whatever it might be, that we're trying to make happen? See, at the time of Jesus, people tend to gravitate, well, I say this way, he tended to gravitate toward people, and people tended to gravitate toward him, who would attach themselves to the only solutions that they could find. And in other words, these are people who are struggling. They've been ostracized by the religious community because they keep trying to fulfill their needs in a way that's sort of out of bounds. And those people find their way to Jesus, and Jesus finds his way towards those people. And there's this consistent trait that they all have throughout their entire lives. All of the stories, it's this one thing, and maybe you're familiar with this. It's exhaustion. Because they're never whole. And Jesus says to those exhausted people, he says these really familiar words, and maybe you've heard them before, but he's simply saying this, and it's about ordering our lives. He says this: come to me, all of you who are exhausted, who are heavy laden, who are burdened, come to me. Take my life upon you, take me upon you, and find rest. Find rest. In other words, there's a right order of your life, and it is about me being at the center. If you come to me, then you might actually find a little bit of rest. Now, you may have wanted ego to seem important, but what if you were actually important? This is what God says. You're actually a cherished child of God. You lived in fear, and you were looking to try to avoid danger, but what if there was in this promised life a life in freedom? You were longing for convenience, but maybe God wanted to do something else, which is really actually to transform you into something you were intended to become. You were longing for pleasure, but really what you're seeking, what God intends to give you, is a fullness of joy. That's the promised kind of life. And we all shortchange it for these other little imitations. God's invitation is to a promised kind of life. Let's pray together. Jesus, we're so grateful that you're patient with us, that we're people who are routinely exhausted. We run ourselves ragged trying to find solutions and make things happen and resolve conflicts in our own ways. And Father, your way seems unwise at times. It seems not sensible. It seems broken. Father, forgive us when we don't trust you. Might we sing right now, Father, songs of hope and of freedom. Might we step into the reality that you're the God who does love us, who is up close, and who longs for us to experience a fullness of life, not merely an imitation of it. So Jesus, would you speak to us as we speak to you? Might we declare who you are? Might you give us at least a taste today of that promised kind of life, an invitation to detach from things that cannot give to us the promised kind of life. So hear our voices as we sing, Jesus. In your name.
Amen. Let's stand and sing together. All these pieces broken in the sky, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty hands, but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet
but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see it now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Oh, I can see it now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life.
It is God who raises us up, us broken us, who are constantly susceptible to attaching ourselves to things that cannot give to us the promised kind of life. It is God who welcomes us home, who invites us to come back to him, who says, when you put me at the center of everything, you get a little bit more order and a little bit more a taste of the life that you were intended to have. So would you do this? Would you put out your hands? And by the way, at the end of the service, as we conclude, if you have needs for prayer, like, some of you maybe have some attachment you need to have God help you to rescue you from. We got folks who love to pray with you on either side, or if you just want to let us know by placing a prayer in the prayer wall, you can do that as well. Would you hold out your hands, and would you receive what God wants to place in your own life, which is this? Jesus, you see us before you. We long for freedom. We long for hope. We long for the promised kind of life. Jesus, would you break us of the lie that we're either not worthy of it, or that the things that are around us that we believe to have so much value can actually give to us, which only you can give. And so, Father, not out of guilt or shame, but out of the promise of a new life, we step into that. Would you give us the courage to do so, to live as people who live, if only by a degree, a little bit more in the promised life that you've given to us and that you desire for us. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Have a great week, you guys. We'll see you later.